November 18th District Advisory Council meeting being held via Zoom here. We have a little over 80 folks in attendance, and I see a few more continuing to come in. But I'd like to welcome everybody to the meeting. And at this time, hopefully you've had a chance to review the minutes that were provided to everybody via email by Ms. Grimm, and I would entertain any suggestions for modifications to those, or if everybody thinks they're correct, I would be happy to entertain a motion to approve same.
I'll motion to approve.
I'll second that.
All right, I saw Ken Wilbert second. I didn't get the motion to approve.
Francine Holt.
And what score are you with, Ms. Holt?
Tropic Isles.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Okay. As has been our custom for these, I'm going to ask if anyone is in opposition to approving the minutes. At this time, if you're in opposition, please say nay. Seeing no one in opposition, the minutes are unanimously approved. At this time, then, I would welcome any public comment from any non-DAC members on agenda items before DAC this evening. Seeing none, we will move on to our board update from our newly re-elected wonderful board member, Ms. Chris Patrica.
Thank you, Chair Hertz. I appreciate that introduction. And I know that I've told you personally the amazement that I'm in of how you run these meetings. It's a lot. It's a lot of people. You keep us on time. You keep us on task, and I really appreciate that. And so as to not violate that and get off task, I'm going to dive right in. There's two things I'd like to talk about tonight. The first is rapid testing in our schools. I'm sure you've all heard that through an amazing partnership with Lee Health, Golisano Children's Hospital, the Lee County Board of Commissioners, and the School District of Lee County, we did receive 2,000 rapid COVID tests that are available to be administered in our schools. I know that Lauren Stillwell, Chief of Staff for the School District of Lee County, is here tonight, and she'll be answering any questions that come up, but there's a couple things I want to touch on. First of all is, again, the amazing partnership. One of the bright sides of this pandemic has been the creation or strengthening of partnerships throughout the county, and this coming together for the rapid testing is a good example of that. The other thing I want to highlight is Ms. Stillwell herself. This was her project. This was her baby. When she took the position as Chief of Staff, I'm not sure that she thought managing a pandemic or all things pandemic related in the School District of Lee County would be her call, but she has stepped up to the plate, and without her, this would not have happened. So I'm very grateful to her. Two things I want to highlight here. First of all, this is not mandatory testing. This testing will not occur without parental consent and without the parent being physically present while the test is being administered. In some of the social media comments I've seen surrounding this, there has been concern by parents that their kids will be tested without their consent. That is not the case at all. There's a series of indicators that will be used to determine which members of staff and which students are eligible for these tests. I am going to ask Dr. Spiro or his staff to provide you all with a link to the workshop where the school board received an explanation of this program. And I urge you all to take, I think it was a 15, 20-minute presentation, take the time to view that presentation. And if you have any questions, certainly reach out to me or staff or your principal or your teachers to let us know what those questions are. But after watching Ms. Stillwell's presentation to the board and hearing from the medical professionals associated with this, I was left with no questions as a board member or a parent. So I think all the information you need is there. Staff will provide you with a link to that meeting so you can view it. The second thing I'd like to talk to you about tonight is our legislative priorities for the School District of Lee County, which were adopted by the school board last night. I don't have time to go through all of them. So staff will also be providing you with a link to those legislative priorities. If you could take the time, please, to review them, go through them, reach out to me if you have any questions about them. This is really important. I think that legislative priorities this year is perhaps more important than they have been in years past. And one of the real highlights, or one of the real important items on our legislative priority is number one on the list, which is to hold schools and teachers and students harmless, so to speak, when it comes to required testing. We need to administer these tests because we need to gather information about where our students are. But you're all very well aware of the many challenges that our students, our teachers, and our district have faced this year. Quality of education has been impacted as a result of the pandemic, and to hold kids responsible for the results of an FSA or the results of an EOC seems very unfair given the circumstances that we're in. So one of the reasons why I'm sharing this with you is because it is entirely likely that I or another school board member might reach out to you or PTO at your school or SAC at your school and ask you to please contact your legislators to let them know how you feel about legislative platforms as submitted by the School District of Lee County. Do you support them and why? It's very important for them to hear from their constituents, especially surrounding issues that have a direct impact on your children. So that is one of the highlights. And then I'll go through a couple of the other ones relatively quickly. We are looking for appropriate funding for school safety in the form of full funding for school resource officers and additional funding to implement a Guardian program. Don't be afraid, Guardian program does not mean arming teachers. Guardian program simply means increasing the level of protection in our schools. It's sort of like a force multiplier in our schools. Guardians are less expensive than SROs, but currently we don't have the funding for them, even though the program exists through the state. The other big highlight is very, very technical and very, very complicated. It is about protecting your students' data. We are very vulnerable as a school district, not just in Lee County, across the entire country. We are vulnerable to attacks where our student data can be held hostage, so to speak, and we're asking for regulations and appropriate funding to make sure that we have the appropriate IT safety and security in place. I say it's highly technical because our chief of IT is really smart and he speaks in a language that I don't understand. So I have asked him for some talking points in layman's terms. And when I get those, I will ask staff to share them with you as well. And then the last legislative priority I will talk to you about, or I will highlight tonight, is a local priority where we have a mental health program in place. It would be considered a pilot program for the state. We would like funding for this program so that we can prove how well it works here in Lee County, and then hopefully it can be scaled up so that all students across the state of Florida can benefit from it. But again, that requires funding. That would require the sponsorship of a member of our local delegation in the Senate and in the House, and we're hopeful to be able to accomplish that this year. Chair Hertz, I'm sorry if I went long. Those are my comments for tonight. Thank you.
Actually, Board Member Pacheco, you're well within your time. We generally give you a full 10 minutes and you didn't use anywhere near that, so you're quite fine. But however, tonight we do have a little add-on. Dr. Sparrow has some wonderful news. I think I won't steal his thunder, but one of my big things in becoming chairperson and wanting to do that and trying to change what has occurred in how DAC works is showing that we make an actionable, realistic difference. And Dr. Sparrow has taken the effort to put together a very short presentation to show us a concrete deliverable that has occurred as a result of recommendations from DAC. Dr. Sparrow?
Thank you, Chairman Hertz, and thank you, Ms. Patrica, for sharing the update on the rapid testing as well as our legislative platform. And yes, when we send out the minutes from this meeting, we'll include the YouTube video from Ms. Stillwell, who walks through the rapid testing process, as well as our legislative platform. So we'll make sure we include both of those. That's not a problem at all. What I want to do is just share with you an action step from our last meeting. If you remember, our last meeting was about trying to develop some clear communication with our teachers around the area of Google Classroom. That boiled up as one of our concerns that we went to work on at the last meeting. And so what I want to show you is this document that's up on the screen. This is a document that was sent out to all district personnel, I believe it was about 2 weeks ago, right after the quarter began. And it is a direct reflection of the work that you gave us, the feedback you gave us, the suggestions you gave us, the questions that you had. We went back and we went to work on all of those and created this flyer, this second quarter reminder of best practices and procedures that went to all of our teachers across the district. And so what I wanted to do is just share with you that, what we talk about all the time is having actionable steps as a result of our DAC meeting. That's something I know Chairman Hertz and Ms. Patrica, it's important to them and it's important to us as well. And so what I want to show you is, here's a clear artifact of the work that you did from our last meeting. So I want to say thank you, because if this helps our teachers and it helps our parents and students, then obviously that's the input that we are looking for. At this time, Mr. Hertz, I'd like to go ahead and just have Dr. Atkins say a few words. He's here, and then I'll introduce our guest for this evening. Dr. Atkins, if you just want to say a welcome.
Yeah, I'll be real brief. Again, thank you very much, parents and staff members for joining this meeting. I know these are always late hours, but your input is very, very important. And I'm thrilled that Dr. Spire was able to share this, because this is just one of a number of examples where our advisory committees have been able to provide us a really good input that has resulted in some real actionable stuff. So thank you very much. That's all I really have, other than I appreciate the recognition of Ms. Stillwell earlier by our board member, because that was certainly a tremendous effort, and she's done an outstanding job there. So thank you for recognizing her. That's it for my comments.
Thank you very much, Dr. Atkins. And so at this time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask our team members that are here this evening in a moment. I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves to you. They're going to tell you their name and their title, and so that you know who's with us. And what we have been asked to do is come and bring a panel to you, then kind of talk to you about communication. We sent out ahead of time, we had sent out a Google Doc asking for some questions around the area of communication, which continues to be a focus area for us. So we're going to tackle those questions this evening, and then we're going to go into our breakout rooms, and we're going to talk about some best practices and suggestions for improvement in those areas as well. As you can already see, our chat box is being worked by our executive directors and our chiefs who are here also. We're going to try to answer as many questions as we can in the chat box, but if for some reason we don't answer your question, please don't worry. Just like we always do, we collect that information and we create a Q&A sheet that goes out to the individuals that are responsible for those areas, and we'll answer those in the minutes. So at this time, I'm just going to ask our chiefs and our directors that are here just to unmute and introduce yourself to our District Advisory Council.
Hi, everyone. I'm Angela Pruitt. I'm the Chief Human Resources Officer. Glad to be here.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Trey Davis. I'm the Chief Information Officer.
Hello, my name is Amy Desmore, and I'm the Chief Financial Officer.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Brian Williams, and I'm the Chief Legal Counsel.
Hey, everybody. I'm Lauren Stowell. I'm the Chief of Staff.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Ken Savage. I'm the Chief Operations Officer.
Hello, I'll go next. I'm Irma Lancaster. I'm the Director of Communications.
As you can see, we have with us this evening, as well as our Director of Communications, because here's the process for this evening. So let me go ahead and stop. Is that better? No.
Dr. Spiro, I think you faded out.
How about now? Is that better?
Much better.
All right, thank you. Okay, so this evening we're going to first address the questions that you submitted whole group ahead of time. If you submitted comments, we're not going to address the comments, but rather the questions that were submitted ahead of time. And then after we're done with the whole group, then we're going to do breakout sessions where, again, we're going to brainstorm best practices and suggestions for improving our communication. And if you remember, this was the question that we had asked you to submit questions ahead of time. And really, the question is, what are your specific questions regarding communication from the school district to the school and from school to home? And so we're going to first address the questions that were submitted ahead of time. And then if we have some extra time, we may answer some questions whole group. But if we don't have enough time, then we'll make sure that we answer them via the blue card that we do at the end also. So first up is some from Irma Lancaster, our director for the communications department. Irma, there were a number of questions that were asked, and so I'm just going to go ahead and read the question. And then if you wouldn't mind answering this question whole group so that everybody can hear the answer. Are we good?
Yes.
All right. So the first question was, Jess, is it possible to send a parent message every time an interim report or report card is sent home?
Yes, it is possible. My understanding is that some schools already do this. However, there could be some schools that do not. So we can certainly coordinate with the schools to do that if that is something that our parents wish to happen.
What about e-flyers? They want to know, is there a way to send flyers whenever a printed flyer is sent home?
So we actually implemented, before my time, a process for flyers to be sent home instead of printed flyers via Peach Jar. However, it sounds like there may be some schools that are still handing out printed flyers. That could be maybe those schools are in situations where they may have a high population of families that they feel maybe don't have access to online, so they feel they need to hand out a printed flyer. But our process, at least as the district, is to only send e-flyers through Peach Jar. So that's certainly something we can, again, reach out to the schools about and to reiterate that that is our process.
Might be a good reminder for our school leaders. It was rather lengthy one. It says, quite often information about our district shows up on local news or social media before our employees are even aware of it. About what's going on regarding policy, events, occurrences. Is there any way that we can prevent that information from getting out to the media, news, social media before the employees can find out?
Well, I'm looking at the details of this question. I'm assuming that it probably has a lot to do with the coverage of our board meetings. So a lot of times the media is very active in covering discussions that take place during board meetings. And if they're covering the meeting and there's a decision that's made that the media feels is important for the community to be aware of, they will publish it immediately before the district might even have a chance to distribute whatever decision was made. So I think a good practice, we realize that everyone is busy and maybe doesn't have time to attend board meetings or even watch them, via YouTube. But, all the agendas are accessible. So, if you do have a few minutes every 2 weeks, the agenda goes up, might be a good idea to just check things out. And if there's anything interesting on there that might be coming down, maybe something to look out for. But I believe that's probably what's happening. It's just that it's getting out there to the media just as it's approved before we have a chance to distribute the relevant information to the appropriate groups.
Thank you. And then a question about the process, but how can fans sign up for school?
Well, we actually do a lot of promotion for School Messenger. However, we know all our families aren't signed up. Again, it could be just accessibility. But when we send out information from the district, our average rate is 83,000 recipients. So that's actually a very high number. And I think that's it's a good rate considering the total number of students we have. And we have about an 80% open rate. So while there's still families left out, we do think that we have a great percentage that do receive it, and we'll continue to promote every chance we get. But of course, your help as parents and community members, word of mouth is always welcome. So thank you.
And if somebody wants to sign up for School Messenger, is there a location where they go?
Yes, they can go to the website, but if they don't want to funnel through trying to find information, the easiest way is just to call their school.
Great, thank you. Is there a way to opt out of phone calls and just get text messages? And I would assume this would be with School Messenger.
Yes, so via School Messenger, when you sign up, you can choose your settings. So when you sign up for School Messenger, you can select phone calls. You automatically get an email, but you can also select to receive a phone call. However, text is something you have to opt in to do. So if people are just happy with getting the email, you can certainly go back in there and change your settings to not receive the phone calls. I will add, though, I think there had been a comment made in the minutes about texting and some people wanting to just receive the text and not the email. And unfortunately, that we don't do that because a lot of times the message that we send is going to be more than the amount of characters that we can fit into a text. And we can't just include a link because the information doesn't live anywhere. It isn't on the website. It isn't like we can just say view this link. A lot of times it's a catered message that's directly to parents that's sent via email. So the text really isn't necessarily giving you the information. It's alerting you that there's important information in your email box for you to review. That's just added information.
Thank you, Ms. Lancaster. And I know there were some more questions for you. And so this next one is if a family with 2 children receives text messages from both schools, but only emails from one school, should they contact the school, or is there somewhere in focus for parents to check?
Yes, they should absolutely contact the school. I'm not completely familiar with Focus, so I'm not sure that information is there, but I don't believe that it is. So the best way to do it is to contact the school, and the tech at the school can assist.
Thank you. And then here's a rather long question. I tried to keep all the questions as they were written and submitted. So sometimes communication from the district does not take into consideration the special needs of specialty centers like Fort Myers Tech, Cape Coral Tech centers. Is there a way to address the needs of specialty centers so communication that is applicable to those centers is given in a timely way, and that communication regarding things that do not have anything to do with us does not bombard our inboxes?
Well, actually, the district does not send information directly to these special centers. School Messenger doesn't have access to those recipients. So if the district does have information that, we feel is relevant to those that attend these specialty centers, we actually send it to the principals, directors of those centers, and they are the ones that disseminate the information. So I'm not exactly sure what information they're receiving that they feel they're being bombarded with, but it isn't coming from the district.
Okay, and so maybe whoever wrote that question could put something in the chat box for Ms. Lancaster if they want to expand on that. And so Ms. Lancaster, you just you can go ahead and mute now and stay with us because there might be some more questions for you. We're going to move on to Ms. Stillwell. We have a couple questions that were submitted regarding really COVID type situations. And so let's ask that first one. This was a rather long one. I think they were trying to give some context. So it would be great if you could say that there were X number of quarantining events and the total numbers of kids quarantined aggregate. It would also be helpful to know the total quarantine by grade for your school. But I realize we're getting into HIPAA restrictions then. And so this level of communication would take really the mystery out of what's going on and allow parents to make informed decisions regarding their school. So is there a rhyme or reason behind the process? I really feel like that's what that question was asking.
Sure, and I appreciate the question because we've been kind of trying to figure this out as we've gone as to what we can provide, what we can't provide, and really I think that the key word in this or or acronym is HIPAA and FERPA, and Brian Williams is also on the call and can certainly jump in and help me. But really what we are trying to do at the district level is to balance the information with protecting the identities of our staff and students. And while you might say, well, we're not asking for the names of people, when we get down into really small numbers, it doesn't take a lot to figure out who those folks might be. And unfortunately, we have had some incidents where people have figured out who those folks are that may be positive cases, and there has been some not nice things said to those parents, not nice things said to those kids about how they're not taking precautions and things like that. So we really are trying to protect the staff and students in the schools with what we are reporting. We don't keep the data for X number of quarantining events. We also don't break it down by grade level. Again, for that reason, that's just not something that we do as a district. We have gone through and talked about putting quarantine numbers out there, but again, we've gotten some direction from the attorneys just about what that means and what it would show. We cannot isolate quarantine numbers based on cases in our schools versus quarantine numbers based on community cases. So by putting some of those numbers out there, we're a little concerned, in all honesty, that people are going to look at that and say, oh my gosh, look at all these numbers they're quarantining because of cases in the school, when really for us, the transmission is in the community and coming into the schools. The transmission within the schools is very low. So that's a little bit of the kind of tightrope that we walk here when we're trying to put out data, is that all of the caveats for the data are very long, and how that would be interpreted by the public. Brian, is there anything I missed?
No, you covered it pretty well. And just to let everybody know, we also reached out to the general counsel at DOE because there was a time where they were trying to collect information as well. And for those of you that don't know, Orange County was involved in a lawsuit regarding a public records request for information relative to their COVID numbers. And for those reasons, in addition to what Ms. Stillwell represented with respect to HIPAA, we wanted to ensure that we were providing information, but we weren't putting ourselves in a situation where we could disclose information that would allow someone to identify either a student or staff. I think someone said it in one of the original questions for communications. There were, information gets leaked out in social media and things like that. And we just want to ensure that our students and our staff feel safe with the information that is being provided to us. And we obviously, based on federal law, have to keep that information private.
And one of the reasons that we did switch the website, because I know that's come up a couple of times, from what we were doing where we were just listing the schools that got letters with positive cases, we did switch over to the data that the DOH was releasing, because it is a little bit more, provides more detail, because it does list out staff and students at the school level for the week of reporting, and then also does a cumulative run of the total since September when they started keeping the data. So we did think that that was being a little bit more responsive to what families were looking for, which is why we made that change.
All right, and then another question around COVID. In regards to COVID notifications, when there's a positive case at the school, are they always sent at night?
Yes. That's my short answer. We figured that it was a little bit easier than sending it during the day because people would be home at night to see it. And I think Irma would agree with me that sometimes when we send those kinds of things in the middle of the day, especially because we're doing, like she suggested, sending the text messages to alert families, then to go to their email to read the notifications, we see a very high level of phone calls that either come back to the school and sometimes, depending on how large the school is, we'll send a notification during the school day and the front office will be bombarded with hundreds of phone calls because families won't either listen to the message or check their voicemail. They'll immediately call the school back and say, hey, I missed a call from you. What are you calling me about? So we're trying to disrupt, we're trying to minimize the number of disruptions that our schools are getting during the day. And normally we are receiving the notification from the DOH in the evening. Typically, except for now that we have the rapid testing, there are some where we're going to be able to know fairly immediately, which is a huge change for us.
Elaborating on that, and those were really the questions that were submitted ahead of time. A lot of them were comments, which we'll save for the breakout sessions. We still have just a couple of minutes left with this time, and so what we'd like to do is if you would unmute your mic, if you have a question, ask your question, and then go ahead and mute, and we'll see which chief is able to answer that question. I want to thank the executive directors for working the chat box and answering those questions. So if you have a question, just please unmute at this time.
I have a quick question.
Go ahead.
I've been getting told by my school, and also it happened to myself, kids are getting sent home when they're having technology headaches and no other symptoms. Is there a reason why they have to be home for 10 days for just a headache alone?
So normally Beth fields these questions, so I'll take a stab at that because she's not here. She's our coordinator of health services. The problem that we have is that we don't know what is causing the headache just by going in and evaluating in the clinic. So if we said it's a technology headache and come back the next day and then that headache actually is tied to COVID and a positive case, then we've potentially just put other students and staff at risk. So what we're telling folks is that yes, when you have any of the COVID symptoms, we are sending home for 10 days and 24 hours with no symptoms, no medication. However, if a family can get a doctor's note or go to their doctor and it says, no, this is just a technology headache, the student is cleared and they can come back to class whatever day, then we're accepting that in order to get those students back more quickly.
Thank you, Ms. Stillwell. Anybody else with a question?
Be quiet.
I'll ask one.
Go ahead.
What is being done to try to promote consistency across the schools? There were some comments already based on the questions about trying to work to do that, but that seems to have been an issue that's been raised several times, that some schools do an excellent job at communicating and other schools don't, and we still don't seem to have real consistency in the information available on school websites and in the methods that schools use to communicate with their stakeholders.
Well, I can provide one example of something that we're doing. Something that I've heard a few times is website consistency, and you just mentioned that. And we, now that everything's been rebranded and the school websites have been rebranded, we've actually already been speaking with our school website managers, because every school has a person that is responsible for managing that school website. And we have put together sort of a monthly checklist that, is pretty much the minimum that schools should be doing, because we want to make sure that parents, when they go to look for information, that they're able to find it. So we're already working with other schools, and we're going to start tracking and make sure that that's happening starting after the new year. So that's one way that we're trying to find consistency. We do have regular meetings with the principals to discuss consistency and a number of various other topics. However, as time goes on, people will go back into their routine. So, we apologize that sometimes there isn't consistency, but we'll continue to work to achieve that as much as possible.
Thank you, Irma. And I don't know if any of our executive directors want to jump in, because I know that, it is important that we have a common message across the district, and we often do share best practices from schools and try to replicate those by different levels. So I don't know if any of the executive directors want to jump in and just share their thoughts on that.
At the middle level, when we meet weekly, it was a few weeks ago, I asked them after our DAC meeting to look at each other's websites, just take a few moments to do that. And they see a best practice or something that's really good on that website to then incorporate it into theirs.
I think on the elementary level, Scott and others, we definitely continue to meet and talk about common messages. We send out, a weekly letter to them. We do have frequent meetings with our principals and talk about various issues, and then we put things in writing that they often will take and replicate out back to their staffs. Just like Ms. Mayer said, at the middle level, we're always sharing best practices and finding those ways to do things even better. So is there room to improve? You bet. With 52 K-8s in elementary schools, we definitely feel that's one of our greatest challenges, and we're going to continue to go at it.
Good evening, everyone. At the high school level, what we've done is similar. We have a weekly meeting with all of the principals that we talk about, and then on Friday they get a consistent message about everything that they need to learn or to know for the week. In addition, we also talk about the fact that each high school has an assigned administrator that's in charge of communications and also messaging. So that's a task that has been assigned specifically to a person. So the district can communicate with them, or parents know who to go to if they're not getting information or if they need to get information sent out. Thank you very much, and I appreciate all of you sharing that so the group can see that there's a multi-tiered approach to how we're doing this across the district. We got about time for maybe one more question before we get into our breakout rooms. So if someone has another question.
I have another question. Who's holding the teachers accountable during these meetings? How are the teachers being held accountable during these Zoom meetings as far as observations?
You want to know how are administrators giving feedback to teachers?
Yes.
And I can let our executive directors, any of those want to jump in and kind of talk a little bit about what your experience has been at your levels? Yeah, what it is that once they get the communication, they get all of the emails from the district. Everything that the principals need to know goes out once a week on a Friday. That way it's consistent and they know what to look for. And then in there, I tell them every week to please make sure that they disseminate the information to every employee that needs to get that information. So it's one-stop shopping. Everything that they need to know comes out during the week, and then if it needs to go to the counselors, it gets shared with the counselors. Specific staff members, it goes to them, and then also if it needs to go to the teachers, it goes to them. So they know there's one place to look.
Yep, and from the elementary level, I would say, essentially, principals are walking through classrooms. They walk through Lee Home Connect classrooms as well as our face-to-face classrooms. They are, announced and unannounced visits. So that does give them the opportunity to see what's going on. And then, we're executive directors, we're certainly walking through schools, and we don't really let the principals know ahead of time we're going to go to this classroom or this classroom. So we do make it a habit to go into both Lee Home Connect as well as the face-to-face rooms.
The principals had all their teachers share with them their classroom codes, so they have access to going in and out at any point. And so they go in and observe, and we've actually sat in, and Dr. Atkins has sat in on some of our Zooms and participated and saw how teachers were using the program Nearpod. So it's been very powerful, and anybody can join and come in on those meetings. And when I was covering at a school, I also went in a hybrid room and observed it, and then went in a couple of Zoom classrooms. We did some coaching and came back, and the teacher actually called me and said, come back, I've changed a few things, and it worked out really well. And so, yeah, it's open door, and we're all learning, and they're getting better as we go. It's a new process. I'm very proud of what they're trying and attempting to do. Somebody like myself who's a little older, it takes a little more work on the technology, but our teachers are giving it their best shot.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that from everybody. So at this time, I want to thank our chiefs and our superintendent and Director Lancaster. Thank you very much for being with us this evening to answer questions. Again, anything they didn't answer that we put into the chat box, we'll make sure that we get some sort of written response for you. And so this is what we're going to talk about in our breakout rooms tonight. Again, we're looking for actionable steps for improvement. And so what have been your positive experiences regarding communication from the school district or from your school? And then conversely, what's your suggestions? What do you think we should be doing to improve communication that we're not already doing? So again, Chief Superintendent, Director Lancaster, thanks for joining us. Erica, whenever you're ready, you can send us into our breakout rooms, and we will see everybody shortly.
from high school tonight?
All right. Hi, everybody. So in the high school group, we all agree that communication has been getting, has improved and is getting better. Teenagers, you know, aren't always free with the information, the flow of information. So we appreciate that information when we can get it. Peachjar is great. However, Peachjar sends out emails and apparently it comes from Peachjar, not the school district. So that may limit some folks opening up those Peachjar flyers to get information. Also, the Peachjar flyers aren't necessarily pushed out directly by the school district. So they're pushed out by individual schools. So there might be a flyer that's submitted by an outside organization, but it might not be approved by your specific high school or school. So some schools might get it, like your friend down the street, if their child goes to a different school, they might get this awesome flyer about tennis club or whatever, you know, with Parks and Rec, and you might not. So, so there isn't consistency all the way with that. Let's see. We did talk about how, parents are notified that aren't necessarily connected with the ability to opt in for print flyers that are available in, you know, Spanish and Haitian Creole as well as English, and that there should be a way for that to be available to students and parents. And while, you know, the budget might be an issue and we don't want to print unnecessarily, that is something that should be considered because not everyone is looking at their text or understands that that's from the high school and that this information is important. Another really big issue was occurred during the early release day. You know, we realized that the school district did an excellent job in trying to communicate with parents and get the kids home safely. However, the teachers did not know before the parents. So that was a little bit frustrating, and that there should have been a district-wide email sent to the teachers with maybe a prompt by the school administrator to check their emails for important information so that they understand what's going on. Now, the teachers who are parents, they received, you know, they'll receive a text or whatever, but that was a little bit of frustration. And then lastly, we believe that there should be consistency with newsletters. So it shouldn't be a high school, you know, we have one or two high schools that send out weekly newsletters and the other ones send out one a month or one every other month or none at all, that there should be some sort of consistency with expectations of how often the schools communicate information like that to parents. And I believe that's all she wrote for the high school. Thank you.
Great. Then let's do middle school.
Okay, so most of ours were positive, and we had many different parents and stakeholders who shared that there's been great communication by the middle schools through either sending out a school messenger email or text on a weekly basis from administration to let parents and stakeholders know what's going on the next week or over the next month on a weekly basis. And another comment was made about the voice of a specific school being very engaging and encouraging someone to listen to the entire message because the voice was very engaging. There were two suggestions that were shared. One was to look at best practices to reduce the number of steps or clicks to get to an actual message. For example, receiving a text message that tells you to go check your email and then going and checking your email and having a link in the email to click and then getting to that, whatever that clickable object is and having 2 sentences to read. And those 2 sentences could have been included either in the text message or in the email. So providing some guidance on best practices for messaging. And then another concern was about sending out some information about how COVID reporting is being conducted right now so that stakeholders have a better understanding of how it's being reported and where to be able to find the most current information available. I think that covers most of it. And there were other things mentioned too, specifically like newsletters. Again, those were being sent out on a weekly basis through email from the school district or from the schools themselves. And then, I'm sorry, there was one more. There was an example shared about an elementary school that does great communication through their Facebook group in a timely manner. So as soon as, and the example that was given was the tropical storm Eta, and how the information that was being sent out was posted immediately in the Facebook group, and parents could get notifications right away about information that was affecting their school or their kids, and have that information right away in a timely manner. Thank you.
Great, now that'll take us to elementary school.
So I will start with our positives since that's what we tackled first. Lots of parents, several people mentioned that they really had excellent communications and felt like people were doing a great job, specifically with their individual teachers. There was many people who wanted to sing praises of the communications going on, and those were provided on both face-to-face teachers from all 3 levels, as well as Home Connect teachers. Some of the suggestions that we had were also surrounding the hurricane, that there were questions on whether or not there's a meteorologist for the schools, and how that information was received by the schools and then processed, because there were concerns with the buses being on the road at 2 p.m. Also, school websites, and specifically where it's difficult to find a chain of command. Some schools list off the teachers or who to reach out to for specific help, and others don't, and perhaps some consistency with that. Also, emails, emailing through the website specifically for the teachers, we're going to teachers' junk mail. And it was brought up that building the website builder for the schools isn't exactly easy to navigate as well. So perhaps researching that platform may be something that might be useful. There were questions about during the 10 days that kids are quarantined and teacher support. Some parents felt like their kids had been just sent home and things were loaded in Google Classroom, but they felt a disconnect while their child is home. And so having that better support system for those children that are being kept home was a topic of concern, questions for the group. And if those kids can go into the Home Connect for those 10 days, but then we run into class size issues and how we can best support those children at home and what those solutions might be. We did also talk about making transparency with the guidelines and policies that are necessary for closing the schools should they close again with the spike. And if there's metrics on, if the schools hit X number, then this program is in place. If the schools hit this number, this is the barometer for if schools would close and what that transparency looks like. I think that's all of my notes. Ken, do you have anything that I'm missing?
No, I think that pretty much nailed anything, but it was also guidelines versus policies compared to what the Department of Education is saying versus what the county is. Is it a guideline? Is it a policy? Is it something we're following? Is it something we're not? So a little more clear and concise communication when a guideline comes out compared to a policy and where that comes from.
Great, thank you very much. And I know this is all useful. I see Dr. Sparrow writing notes on everything. And obviously I know too, I again want to thank Dr. Sparrow for having his executive directors at each grade level in the breakout sessions. So they're also directly hearing all this so that when he meets with them and follows up, which I know that he does, as also witnessed by what he shared with us at the direct action steps that occurred as rolled to DAC. I'm sure we're going to be hearing similar updates in the future about things that have come out of this meeting and changes. It sounds like we're still hearing consistency issues, and that's an area of focus I know for Dr. Atkins as well that they're going to be working on. And Board Member Patrica has also in the past commented on those issues, and we'll be following that closely. So I think that's all great stuff. At this time, I am happy to take public comment from any non-DAC members on any non-agenda items. Seeing none, I would happily entertain any comments for the good of the order at this time.
Yes, also someone mentioned parent volunteers. Last meeting, someone in the chat mentioned perhaps a parent volunteer on the Zoom meetings, possibly be very beneficial for kids in the elementary level to have a parent, a designated. Designated parent for the Zoom meetings. For example, when the teacher has an emergency fire drill or there's internet issues.
Okay, thank you very much. I saw Dr. Sparrow taking notes. He's nodding, so he captured that. We should follow that. Does anyone else have any comments for the good of the order? All right, seeing none, I'll let everyone know that our next meeting is currently scheduled for January 27th of 2021. So we have a little bit longer break. Typically, we don't have a meeting in December due to the holidays and the other issues with school closures. So I look forward to seeing everybody again, January 27th of 2021. And certainly the wonderful Ms. Grimm will be sending out email reminders of that, as well as documentation on the exact subject and topics. We've talked about a few in the executive DAC meeting. It looks like Dr. Sparrow would like to comment at this time.
I just want to assure everybody that all the questions that are in the chat box and those that were brought up by each of the levels today, we'll make sure that we have the appropriate staff respond to those. So when you see the minutes come out, please make sure that you see those questions. And if by chance your question doesn't show up in the minutes, please reach back out to Ms. Grimm or myself, and we'll make sure we get the answer. And I also want to say thank you very much for the suggestions. Yes, you are correct. We're going to go to work on continuing to deepen our common approach around communication. So thank you for the diligence this evening.
All right, with that said, Board Patrica, are you leaning forward to speak? No, you're good. Okay, then I would happily entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll motion to adjourn.
By Mr. Wahlberg, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, and that was Melissa Tamboris, I believe.
That's correct.
I apologize if I butchered your last name. Anyone opposed to us adjourning and reconvening on January 27th, 2021, speak now or forever hold your peace. Seeing none, I wish everybody happy holidays, great Thanksgiving, and however you spend your Christmas or other holidays, Hanukkah, other holidays over the December period, and look forward to seeing everybody again in January. Take care and be safe out there.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.